Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads navigate through their lives during and after divorce and create an amazing life for themselves and their children. I'm Jude Sandoval. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us on this show today. I am very pleased to have connected with our guest today. Mostly pleased because I wish I would have found him way back when I was going through my divorce and subsequently after my divorce to assist in making less mistakes during my dating life once I was divorced. My guest today is Eric Muraven, and he's the founder of Dating Ace. And Dating Ace is a coaching service that specializes in guiding newly single individuals who are back in the dating game to have successful and rewarding dating experiences. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jude, and thank you for the intro, and very honored to be here.
Successful and rewarding dating experiences. Okay, so I've had some of those, once in a while. Seems like I have a successful one would be one, but then successful and rewarding would be like even better. But before we get into that, can you share with the audience a little bit about your background, a little bit about what got you into coaching people to find successful and rewarding dating experiences?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, the story goes back to 2016 when I separated. You and I spoke a little bit about this. So I'll bring just a little bit of God in here. I have a sense that everybody has a person. I was thinking, you know what, there is a person out there for me. So I wanted to go out and date, and I didn't want to wait. I was separated. What am I gonna do? So I had a little bit of downtime, and I said, I didn't really enjoy dating back in my 20s. It wasn't particularly successful. I didn't enjoy it. How am I going to do better? So I became a bug, and I started watching videos, reading articles. I read some books as well. How am I going to do better? So I sort of accumulated a lot of information and went out there. And very quickly, the dating thing kind of took off for me. And it went from getting like a couple dates a week to being able to have like multiple dates on a single Saturday, a single Sunday. So it was like, wow, like this really took off for me. And I was out there for a bit, and I forget how many conversations I had. It was like over 200, even with like some heavy filtering and how many distinct separate dates, different people I wanted to date with. I think it was like over 75 that I went on, even with the filtering. So I ended up meeting my person there. It was very successful for me over like a couple months.
Wow.
But I had people say to me like, what did you do? It worked out really well for you. So I gave some people some advice, and some people came back to me for more advice. And I kind of walked backwards into doing this. And I really enjoyed helping people. First, it was just friends. And then I'd just be like going somewhere and somebody would hear my story and want to know more. So I've turned this into a business mostly because I really enjoy doing this. I really like helping people with this. And I do believe in my heart of hearts that there is a person, every person has a person for them out there.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you started dating kind of right away once you got separated and didn't really take any time off, or did you take some time off and kind of do some self-reflecting? And if you did, what was the benefit of doing that, or was there not a benefit to doing that?
There's a 3-month hiatus, and I just needed some downtime maybe to kind of heal myself. But ultimately, I did want to go back out there. Life is short, and I didn't have anything to wait for. I wanted to go back out there.
Okay.
And I always encourage people to do that too. If you feel like you're ready, you should.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that for just a brief minute from the perspective of, because you see men and you talk to men quite often that are interested in getting out in dating. I don't talk to men, or at least in my practice and the work that I do. I'm not a dating coach per se. Like I can talk around some of that, but I'm curious to talk about kind of that time frame, if it's a good idea, because I've heard both ideas. Like you really need to take some time off to do some soul searching, to really get to understand who you are, what your values are, and what you're looking for going forward. And some of doing that, some of figuring out what you want going forward takes understanding what you brought to your failed marriage or your ending marriage in order to not make the mistakes. And I'll tell you why, because I did the same thing you did. I got back out there, and I'll tell you what, I made the same mistakes in not doing, the soul searching, the really understanding of what it is that, I brought to the marriage that was not successful, that I need to change and then look for something different in the future. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So I'll say one thing in there too, and I don't know the full demographics of the audience who listens to this, but actually my first 2 clients were women. I do work with women, more men than women,
Okay.
but I do work with women as well. I think it's good to do some soul searching as a sense, and like you talked, there's a bit of a bitter pill around this, owning like what's it about me? What did I do wrong? Why this breakdown, and owning whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I encourage though people to do though, so it's good to take a little bit. I think it's good to have a little bit of downtime. But like I said, life is short. I encourage people to. I think it's good to get back out there and see what's going on. I often tell people, like, you may not know exactly what you're looking for. It's good to start with a really wide scope. And in the end, you end up learning like what's like, if you create like a real honest process. So like, I myself went really wide. Say, okay, let's just start dating anyone, and then we're going to filter it in. Very quickly, I found out like what's important to me. So, I meet with somebody and everybody was like interesting to me. There was very few people that I found just outright totally boring. That was very rare. Everybody had some sort of story or some sort of background. It's interesting to hear about them, but I found out like actually a lot about me in the process. So like when something was interesting to me, what was interesting about her, what didn't I like? And in that process, as you go on like dates, you'd see like, well, she really doesn't like this, or she's not interested in that. And I can see now that's really important to me. So it's a very dating itself is a very narcissistic exercise, and I know you've talked about narcissism, but maybe not in the evil sort of way, but it's sure. Really this is about you. So dating, the process of dating is seeing, is this work for me? Once you get into a relationship, then it's the other side of, you're really dedicated to this person. You want to support them, and hopefully they really support you. But the process of dating is saying, does this work for me? And what's in this for me? Is this going to work? And that's the only way to really have a successful relationship, is making sure that this works for you. So I think it's good to get out there. It's good to go out there and figure out what you like. And part of dating actually is that, you figure out about the other person and about yourself.
Well, that's fair. And I think that's fantastic. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you used it kind of as an opportunity to learn more about yourself through the process of like refining what those values were, what's important to you. But it also sounds like you came at it from a perspective of curiosity, right? Like, oh, this is an interesting person. What can I learn from them? What can I learn about myself from dating and being with them, or going out on, I mean, that's like a massive amount of dates that you talked about going on. That's like exhausting, almost a full-time job. So, but I mean, I'm sure it was seriously enlightening. So I think that's a good perspective, that maybe the men that are listening, and it's divorced dads that are listening here. And, is if you can approach that from the perspective that you just shared, I think that's very, very healthy. Whereas like, looking back for me, I was just trying to like plug back in another bad relationship with another person that is not beneficial to me, in place of the last failed relationship. And that is not good. That is not healthy. And I did not have enough of a perspective and understanding and maybe just self-enlightenment or as you did, to say, oh, well, okay, let me look at this. Let me understand this. Let me, do the self-introspection. So I think that's probably important to point out to the dads listening out there. Use it as an opportunity for self-reflection and refining what it is that you want and how you want to move your life forward.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jude. And that is totally a good point. This is that opportunity to do better and use it as a learning experience, but also take some time to just kind of reflect on it. You know, what went wrong, and ultimately, this isn't about a blame game. But you know, was it something you did? Somehow something went wrong somewhere. But you know, look at the choices that were made, and just it's not. And again, it's not about blame. It's just trying to, you know, how am I going to do better? How am I not going to have the same thing happen? What are those patterns? Well, where did it break?
Right. And I think that's great. In typically, because dating with children adds a little bit of a more challenging component. So that's why I typically recommend trying to take really your time to really get to understand, because you have so much going on. It can be so challenging to just like simply coordinate a date when you have kids, or if the other person has kids, that if you just take your time into it, you know, I seriously don't think I could ever do what you did, like that amount of dates and that amount of time period. But you know, like anything, you start to do it, and you start to do it, you get better at it, you refine it, and you did. So you know, if somebody wants to do that, it's going to be definitely a good learning experience, which takes me to kind of the topic that I really wanted to hit on today, which is the dating apps. So there's all kinds of dating apps out there. They've all got their different flavor. They all tell you why, you know, you're going to find the love of your life on them. And I've probably done every single one of them. And now during COVID, depending on where you're at in the world, and we've got people listening in multiple countries all across the world, it kind of depends on how can you actually go out and meet somebody when you're all locked down. So it seems like we're getting a lot of questions around this dating apps and what can I do and how can I do them? So I wanted to really get into kind of some of the fine detail. I've had some good experience with dating apps. I've had some like terrible experiences with dating apps, and I've used them over the past 8 years. I will say I'm currently not, for a specific reason that we can get into later in the show, currently using any dating apps. But let's talk a little about that and maybe take some of our divorced dads on the dating app journey, from like finding one that might suit them better, paid, non-paid, how to set up a profile, what's beneficial in the profiles, etc.
Okay. So I'll just start off, full disclosure. I love dating apps. I think they're amazing.
Okay.
And the reason is, so let's go back like 20, 40 years ago. The only way you met somebody is like maybe you went to the same church, or somebody from your church knew somebody else, or somebody at work. You know, it was a very one-to-one, like I could have never gotten that many dates, like going back, like I just don't know how would I have ever pulled that off. You know, and I'm probably too old to go to bars anyway, to like that much. I don't have that kind of money, nor does my liver have that kind of strength to meet people. And it's just not the best venue always anyways. Dating apps, and not all of them, so they're not all created equal, but dating apps, you know, generally speaking, if you're on a dating app, you're suddenly like, you're in this market of being able to find other people who may fill your demographic that you're looking for, and be able to find, like, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to, you wouldn't be able to find these people. Like my partner I'm with now, I wouldn't have been able to find her. Like I don't know how I would have ever connected with her if it wasn't through a dating app. It's just this amazing resource suddenly to be able to to find people and to do filtering and to do searching. It's revolutionary that it's available now. You know, you think of maybe like in old Eastern Europe, the matchmaker or something like that. You know, that was the closest thing. You know, now it's, you own the process, and it's not somebody else. You actually go and get to do that searching, and it's whatever else somebody else puts in there to go. You get to search. They get to search on you. It's just an incredible thing.
Sure. So if I'm understanding you, the fact that we have a resource that helps us weed out and know that this is actually somebody that's interested in like dating, right? As opposed to we're in the grocery store and we're approaching, and, you know, God knows if the person's dating somebody in a divorce or is, you know, or whatever, you know, from out of town, you know, whatever it may be, that this is a pool of women that we know. And like you then also said, that we can even narrow down and specify that even more. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit
Yeah,
too.
so you get to really get to do some filtering. I'm going to add one other thing in there. Here's one of the challenges though, I tend to work with a lot of men who are Gen Xers. So Gen X means you're born somewhere between like 1965 and 1983, 1985 or something like that.
Okay.
So just a little quick generational theory. We're big, so Gen Xers, we're really big on nonverbal communication. So we understand, like, what is it, if I look a certain way or I do a certain thing, that's a big part of our communication. So like going to like dating online was not a natural thing. We weren't born with the internet. We're also big nonverbal, Gen Xers, we're big nonverbal communicators as well.
Okay.
So it really gets really overwhelming really fast. So as great as it is for Gen X guys, it can be really, really hard. It's just not a natural thing.
Okay. Well, that would be like right exactly where I fit in, because I would be a Gen Xer. And so, yeah, that would be one of my experiences too. It's a little bit like window shopping for dates is how I describe it, right? You're just kind of like walking down the street, looking through the windows or swiping or whatever you're doing, right? Little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, so it is a little uncomfortable. It's weird. And then you see somebody's face, yes, no, you start swiping. And there's, probably the best known dating app out there, the original one everybody heard of was Tinder, and that's what it is. It's all really about swiping. There's not a heck of a lot of criteria that you put in there, and you just start like, okay, and you tend not, on Tinder, you tend not to read the profiles either. You go on there, you just look at somebody's face, like, she looks good. I don't think that really floats my boat. Left, right, left, right, left, right. That's why so it's okay to be on a swiping app, and it's okay to be on multiple apps, but I encourage people to go onto apps where you can actually do searching, and where you can actually put in do some heavy duty criteria inside of there. And that's what I was talking about before. This is where it really becomes, you get to own the process. So I get to say, hey, these are the things, and you can start, and this is exactly what I did. I started really wide, but then I was able to like really start narrowing it, based on, looking at age, and then geography, how close is somebody to me, and then some other criteria. And maybe some of it's, and you don't have to use all of it. Some of it, like, I didn't really care what her height was. That that wasn't something I was really thinking about. Your minimum height, like, I don't know. So that wasn't something. But for other people, there may be things that are really important. Is it hobbies? Is it religion? Whatever it is, you get to put that in there, or education. You get to go and play with these things and figure it out. And as time goes along, for me, like, I was able to narrow that in. So like in this process, very quickly, I was able to narrow it in, and so women who fit that demographic of what I was looking for, I'm able to go and find them.
Gotcha. So let's talk about that briefly for a second, in that some of them, and Tinder originally was simply like a hookup app, right? It was, put the profiles on. If you connect, maybe you're hooking up with somebody. I know that it's morphed a little bit more into more of a dating app, but kind of the ones that you described, the swiping ones, were developed a little less around finding a meaningful relationship and more around, let's connect and have some fun, see what happens, have a drink, whatever. Is that fair to say?
That is Tinder, and still Tinder
and Bumble maybe to some extent also, and there's some other ones out. I mean, there's a ton of them out there.
There's a ton of them out there. There's ones out there I haven't even heard of.
Those would be some of the main ones, like the Tinder and the Bumbles, which are the swiping left, swiping right thing.
Yeah, and those are really about swiping. There's very little criteria you put in there, and it's all about just, and really and truly, what comes up is a person's picture, one picture of them. You don't get to see any of the content about them, and this is part of the thing too. So, and it works both ways. You see somebody else's picture, and most people are really pretty bad at picking their own pictures on there. I remember being on there, and I'd say like, oh gosh, you look at somebody like, that's a much better picture. You should have used that picture as your main picture on there. So, you know, that's why I just don't like the swiping thing's okay, but I don't think that should be your go-to thing for going and trying to find somebody, because, you know, all you do is see one picture and then you're going to swipe left or right. Well, it's not, you know, this person could be just put up a bad picture of themselves.
Right.
A lot of their other criteria could be a really good fit for what you're looking for.
Right. So you can let's agree that you need to put some decent pictures up, right? Like not the one that you cut off of the picture of you with your arm around your your ex-wife, right? And or, you know, the one of you hunting like with your shotgun like 100 yards off, or you know, get some good pictures done and get something up there that looks good, that's presentable, whatever site you're on, whether it's the swiping sites, whether it's the more meaningful ones, just get something up there, because basically what I'm hearing you say is you're marketing yourself, right? So like I called it the online window shopping, right? So you see those displays when you're window shopping, they don't look like crap. You know, they take some time to make them look good. Take some time to make yourself look good.
That's a great point. Thanks, Jude. That's a totally good point. You know, this is your window. You know, if you're going through the mall or whatever else, you know, what you see in that big window there, that's what I'm kind of expecting inside. So your pictures are actually crucial. You know, having a good profile is really important, but those pictures are the most important thing. And I spend with my clients a lot of time making sure we get the right pictures on there.
Okay. Well, cool. So we can agree on that. Let's try to make yourself presentable, looking good for somebody, just like you'd want, you know, when you're swiping through or you're looking through profiles, you're going to be drawn to somebody that, you know, that looks presentable, that looks nice. And, you know, so do that at a minimum. Now, you know, with the swiping apps, like you said, there's not a lot of information. You're basically just looking at looks, right? Like, I'm attracted to that person, I'm not attracted to that person. Yes, you know, swipe whatever way, yes, so that I can connect. Is there a benefit to doing that as a divorced dad, like just having having an app like that where it's not going to be a deep connection or it's not going to be meaningful?
It can be kind of fun.
Okay.
Also, you know, you can just connect with people on there too. So, you know, maybe some, you know, there's it's a bit validating that somebody actually chose to swipe right on you as well. You know, that there is value in that.
Okay.
And, you know, and you can, I did get all those dates I mentioned, most of them were not through, I got a few through a swiping app, but most of them were through was through an app, not that where you don't do swiping and where you actually get to do messaging.
Okay.
And so the chance for your messaging to really stand out, still, like, I think the ratio is much higher of like how many men will approach a woman versus women approach a man. For men, you need to stand out.
Right. Which, like with us Gen Xers with a little bit of gray hair, it's going to be a little more challenging. But and kids, you know, but like you said, so just have appropriate expectations if you're getting on something like that. Utilize it for the ability to have some fun, swipe, and maybe refine your ability to start a conversation with somebody, would you say? Because once you connect, maybe figuring out how to like say something interesting that would pique a conversation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And one of the other things too, I'm just going to add this about the swiping things too. So I live in a really, really big city. Okay. I live in one of the biggest cities in North America.
Okay.
You can go through that swiping thing really fast, and it gets to the point you can just be standing somewhere, and next thing you know, swipe, and you actually can exhaust the whole thing. Like, and you know, new people come on there, but still, then when you've done swiping, you're done swiping. So for me, like, being able to do the searching is a really the key part of this, because it does take a little bit more work, but you're able to do that tailoring and then to be able to send off that communication. Yes, you get to stand out then. So you get to set yourself apart, and you also become you become an interesting person, hopefully, or not, and then you get to move on to finding the person who is a good fit for you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. And you said, and you mentioned the fact that it takes many more messages to women in order to get a response than it does for the opposite. So if you send messages, you don't get a response, just don't be surprised. It's okay. And don't take it personally. It's just that many of these women are getting incredibly inundated with message after message after message. And oftentimes it's, hey, babe, let's hook up, or, hey, babe, love your eyes, or, something just completely ridiculous that they're having to sort through.
Yeah, they get a lot of messages like that. So it's your chance to stand out. So like sending, hi, like nobody wants that message. It doesn't take a lot, like, and then I know guys who'll write books, like, don't write a book. You keep it short and keep it sweet. There's some best practices around that. But yeah, this is your chance to stand out and drive home, get results. I will say though, like, and I know guys, they'll say, oh, I sent a couple off, nothing happened. I think I did really well on dating. I think I had really good practice around that, but the response rate for me, like, was less than 50%.
That's 50% would be phenomenal.
Mine was well below 50%. Like, yeah. There's a bit of a numbers game around it too. So, just
sure. Well, let's talk about that for a quick second then, because I don't know if you read the book Dataclysm, and it's written by the founder of OkCupid. And the first half of the book, he talks about all the statistics around dating apps from what they were able to garner in learning from, because, so people are anonymous on these for the most part to the company. So they have all this data. And my understanding was that it takes approximately 100 plus messages to get one response, is what they found in their studies of their information.
Wow. Okay.
So just know that, when you're swiping, it's okay if you don't get a response. If you put a message in there and you don't get a response, it's okay. You're with like the majority of men out there, because it's just the nature of how the apps are structured, right?
Yeah.
However, if like you said, creating a unique message, something that stands out, can raise that way, way higher than, having to send 114 messages. So let's talk about that philosophy too, because there is a philosophy between just a stock message that you copy and paste, to taking the time to actually type out a message to that is based upon, let's say, if you're just on the swiping app, their looks, or maybe something that they briefly said in their profile. Do you have any sage advice around that?
Yeah, so you want to be engaging. So like, I see guys and they'll write a novel. They'll be like, hey, I'm this, I'm that. What about you? And then like all of this content. And then for if somebody is interested, whoever you sent it to her, like, she may be just overwhelmed. It's like, I don't even know where to respond to somebody, and actually could throw it out. So you want to keep it concise. So and you do want to comment on something that you saw about them. And so this is one of the things that's harder too. So when you get into like the Tinders and the Bumbles, they tend to be really light on content. So you can at best maybe like, hey, was that you in Central Park? Like, you don't have as much to work with on there. So when you start getting into like, into the other dating apps where you start to do some searching and then they have a little more content about it, you can say, hey, well, that's really interesting. Looks like we both speak Italian. How did, I learned it, here, how did you learn it? Some other things. You can find some common ground and you can find something to comment on. And that's really, I think that's really the secret sauce around this is, really, everybody wants to know that you actually looked at their profile and that you weren't, especially for women, they actually want to know, did you actually look? Is there something interesting? Or you're just another guy saying like, hey, beautiful, and you sent off like 500 today, that number from the founder of OkCupid, is it some guy who's just like sending off 500 and hoping to get that one hit?
Sure.
You might, but I think this is what raises it, actually having that, a short, tailored message. And that's something I work with guys on too, is like, here's some best practices really around, to really fine tune. And there's some really good science around this too, and some things that really make it click.
Right. So would it be fair to say it would be more beneficial around the swiping ones or some of the free ones that you have a much more difficult time gaining the attention of the woman on to have maybe some kind of copy and paste, silly, maybe funny, interesting, unique message to just pop in there, so you're not spending 114 whatever the 100 plus messages. That's like hours of work to not get a response. Whereas if you just had something that you're just like, click, oh, connected, paste, let's see what happens, that it's still unique. Would that be a fair and way to go about it?
Yeah, I think you would do better. So if you could even just come up with something funny and unique to say, something other than "Hey, beautiful," or
Right.
"I love I love your eyes," or something like that. To have something, even if it was just like a stock thing that you just started shooting out, you will. And this is part of the thing too. So sooner or later, you're going to find you're going to come across. Hopefully, you'll come across somebody's profile who really catches your interest. And now you definitely don't want that stock of like, "Hey, my name's Bob, blah da 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 da," something funny. You really want to catch their eye, and that's where this really comes in. So you really want to have that message. How am I gonna what's gonna be the, how do I do that? And that's really like looking at their profile and really figuring.
Okay, so let's transition then into some of the maybe more detailed apps like a Match or a eHarmony that have more specific information around what you put into your profiles, what you can find on other profiles, and how you best structure that for success.
Okay, so I didn't touch any, so I don't know a ton about Match and eHarmony. And as last I knew, they were all like, those were, you had to pay. Like there's no free version of those. So
so do you, let's ask that. Do you see any benefit to paying, to not paying? Is there is it better or worse? And what could those benefits or cons be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's one benefit to like the paid ones, in that if you paid, you're not going to find tire kickers on there. So like there won't be any bogus profiles on there. Like if you're willing to pay, then you're really serious about this.
Yeah, or the married women who just want to get some gratification by putting their pictures up on an app and get some connections.
Yeah, yeah. So you will avoid...
or prostitutes. I'm not kidding. You're serious. There's a buttload of them on most of the free apps that are just looking, for something other than what I would say a divorced dad is looking for, which is, in that I would be advocating for, is really to try to make a connection to move forward in some meaningful way.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. So you've kind of got a middle ground here. So you've got eHarmony and the Match. So you pay, and generally speaking, if somebody's on there, they're really serious about finding somebody because they've dropped some money on this.
Sure.
On the flip side, though, then you've got like, and this is one of the things too, I don't like about like the Tinders and the Bumbles. Yeah, everybody can get on there. There's a really low point of entry. All you do is got to post a picture. It doesn't have to be a picture of you. Like, let's be honest. Like anybody can put any picture.
Catfishing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's real easy just to go and set it up. The middle ground is so you've got like the OkCupid and the Plenty of Fish. There's it's freemium, so you can pay if you want to.
Right.
I'm not a fan of paying. I don't think you need to. And there, you've got a really big pool because they are free. So you've got the biggest pool. You do have some bogus stuff in there. You've got some people in there who aren't serious, but still you've got a much bigger pool in there. You're not spending any money on it either. So you've got this good middle ground of like probably serious people, and you get to do the searching. You're not stuck in the Tinder and the Bumble. Like all you do is just swipe with very little criteria to go to find somebody on there.
Yeah, exactly. So in my experience, I've had much better quality connections with women on the paid sites. And it was well worth whatever the 20, 30, 40 bucks or whatever it costs to do it per month, in the sense that you had a higher rate of responses. You had people that were more serious about connecting offline, that were just wanting to chat or trying to find some gratification in having some guy give them attention, and that the non-paid sites were just a lot more effort in attempting to really connect at a level that's not superficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you will find that it is more, and it's just inherent. It's like if you paid, you're more serious. You're invested in it.
Yeah, but again, it will depend upon the divorced dads out there how much time they want to commit to it and what it is that they're looking for. If they're looking for just to get out, date, kind of test their dating abilities again, maybe the free apps and the swiping apps are a good thing to just get on, to start getting dipping your toe back into the pool and saying, okay, well, I'm going to start learning how to have conversations, start learning how to flirt again, start learning how to, to be interesting and set up dates, or, or try to create a connection that gets somebody that's interested. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And it's not a terrible starting point, because you go out there and suddenly, like, you've just watched whatever else happened in your life, and this isn't the high point of your life, but this is the other side. This is all the potential. I know on your show you focus on this. Where do we go from here? How do we make things better? And that's the big part. Suddenly, like, on these dating apps, really low point of entry, and suddenly you're on there, you're swiping, like, wow, there's just endless possibilities of trying to find somebody, all different kinds of people and different stories.
Which is good and bad. We'll get into that in a minute, probably.
I think it's good. And I know why you could say it's bad, but this is a great thing. Suddenly you get to go and meet somebody. You're not, and all you are is meeting them, or maybe you're just messaging them, or maybe you don't hear back from, but it's something. This is the potential of going forward.
Right. And like you said, if you can, in the beginning, which is if you can approach it with a curiosity and with the understanding and attentions that this is helping me to refine me and get better at being, get better at dating again, then that is, without having any end goal. I'm not going to find like my future wife and we're going to get married in a year and I'm going to be doing this on, Tinder. Right.
Yep.
Just take it from the perspective that you need and just understand that. And it will be healthy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But
okay.
One of the things too, and I probably should have mentioned this early on, is this is for everybody. Because one of the things when I've talked about this with people, like I've had people say to me, like, well, that's okay, maybe it's good for other guys, but here's my situation, I'm this or I'm that, and I was in my Uber, and the Uber driver says, well, it sounds great, but I'm just an Uber driver. I was like, no, man, like there's somebody out there for you. You can be out there too, and there's different ways of, and this is one of the things I like to help people with too. How do I optimize my profile? You help people get where they're going. Like I needed you today. And, other people too, like, well, I'm kind of overweight. Well, you know what? That doesn't mean you don't deserve to find somebody. So this is something that's open to everybody, and don't disqualify you. Let the other person disqualifies you. You don't disqualify you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic point, because, you're out there, you found somebody before, there's somebody out there for everybody. And this is just another opportunity and way in which, you can start to begin to connect with people. So if you're feeling some sort of low self-esteem around that, or you're not of some, these aren't set up. These aren't set up just for a certain demographic of people to utilize. They're set up for everybody to utilize. And again, that goes back to the mindset, right? The dating mindset, which, if you need dating mindset and you need to figure that out, that's why you call Eric and you talk to Eric and you go through, trying to understand and, go through this process with, how you're dating and value. So let's talk about that for a second then, in creating your profile and honing that in, and if we can take that from a perspective of a divorced dad, because I did this really, really wrong in the beginning, and I kept it real general, and then I finally, like, after you said having successful and rewarding dates, after having very unsuccessful and unrewarding dates, I finally, and I mean, when I mean finally, I'm talking about A/B testing this with like multiple profiles on maybe some apps and seeing which works better and which doesn't, which response rates from copy and paste to whatever gets better, and general profiles to being very specific. I found once I really honed in on what it is I was looking for, and this had to do with me determining what my values were and what I wanted going forward. Then I started to get the dates that were more, meaningful and more successful.
Yeah. And I would say that was my experience as well. So like I started
Okay.
pretty general, and
Mm-hmm.
I came to learning what other people see in there, and also like what's important to me in this process. And that's helps like define, what, and you shouldn't have a long rambling profile, but there's some relevant key points in there. And you also, it's a chance to kind of show your personality in there too.
Mm-hmm.
So, for information, I think it's always important. So no matter where you are, if you're a parent, I think that's a good thing, because you want somebody who understands that,
Right.
I'm a dad, I have kids. This is key priority in my life.
Huge.
That's not gonna change. So, maybe you don't have kids, that's okay, but you need an understanding of like where this fits into my life. That's the type of information, that's good to put on there. And by the way, no pictures of kids in your profile.
Yeah, so I've heard it both ways with this, with the pictures of your kids, not pictures of your kids. I've done it both ways. I preferred not to, because you're not necessarily marketing your children. Okay, you're marketing yourself, right?
Yep.
So I've got like, and I've had women comment to me, "Well, you have no pictures of your kids. Why? What are you hiding?" Da da da. It's like, no, I'm not. It's just, it says on my profile, I'm a father, a divorced father of 3. So, but I'm marketing me. It's me that you're going to be dating. I mean, if you're lucky enough, then eventually maybe you meet my children, but
Yeah.
it's all going to stem from the relationship here too. So I would agree with you. Try to keep the children at, out of the pictures, out of the conversation as much as possible. And, to whatever extent you connect.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some of this too is like just knowing, and, let's get the relevant information on there. You don't need to put super controversial stuff on your profile. Like you don't need to talk about all your political opinions, but some things are important to you. You really like to hunt. And so you can,
Mm-hmm.
Somebody gets to know, this is, if they're not going to be pleased with the hunter, like,
Right. Sure.
that's the type of stuff that you have on there. And so you get to kind of, someone says, that's really interesting, maybe she grew up like in a family of hunters, and relates well to that.
Yes.
Do I spend lots of time inside, outside, religion, cooking, all sorts of things like that, like good information to put on there. And in the process, you do get, ultimately this is just like light filtering that you get to do. Ultimately you meet somebody and you see if you click with them.
Right. It's the window shopping again. You kind of see it, you'll kind of like what it looks like, and then you're going to still have to get in the store. You're going to have to meet, you're going to have to connect. You're going to have that nonverbal communication you said us Gen Xers need to have to really feel comfortable. But, this is just that, you're designing that window shop. And when you're designing it, what I'm hearing you say is be yourself. Like, be yourself. You're a hunter, or you like, poetry slams, or, whatever it is that you like or you're interested in. Share some of that in your profile. Some of the paid ones and the more well-developed ones have some of those prompts where you can fill all this stuff out and say what you do for hobbies and where you like to travel to and all kinds of other stuff. So it is very, very well developed. But on that note, also, from the flip side, when you're looking at that, can you get ridiculously overwhelmed and or too picky about like, oh, she doesn't this or she doesn't that? Let's talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, like you shouldn't do that. Like, well, so ultimately, like you should be, when it comes to actually selecting somebody who you want to be with, you should be really picky, making sure this is a good fit for you. But keep in mind, like, what's really important. And this is the thing, like, I see people get like really, really picky about stuff. And, this like becomes like a Seinfeld episode, like, oh, like picking
George, right?
the main point. You're like, well, it's like, well, gosh, I
don't become George Costanza.
Yeah. So, let's not go the Costanza route here.
Right.
Let's be realistic about the things that really matter, and keep kind of an open mind. This is like, there's top level priorities, things, things that are, that you must have. And then, there's other things maybe that aren't so important, and to know what that criteria is.
Right. So, for example, if you have kids and you have younger kids, let's say maybe under teenage, and you're looking at a profile, and she's maybe single, and the important thing is her traveling, and it's all a bunch of travel photos. It's probably not going to be a great fit. Maybe,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
probably not, because you've got kids, and you know, jet setting around the world is probably not likely for the time being. So that might be something that you are cognizant of, or pay attention. It still doesn't mean that you may not want a message and try to have that conversation, but just be aware of something that might not fit.
Yep, that's a great way of putting it. So, you know, yeah, let's connect. But, you know, it's one date. It's one date. You know, like,
Sure.
let's see if there's a fit or not. I did this too. I actually had a date with somebody. She was really interesting. She said to me, she said, "Oh, I'm really looking for somebody, you know, who had like kids who were grown." I'm like, "Okay, well, it's nice, it's nice chatting with you." You know, she disqualified me pretty quickly on the date when she figured out what
Right.
I had. You know, she knew I had kids. I guess she didn't understand how old they were. But you know, that's part of this too, and we get to do that as well. You know, as men, you know, we get to call these shots. You know, you get to say, you know, what's important to me, what's not. But if you're interested, let's go for it. Have that one date.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with being upfront and open about that too while you're having a conversation, because oftentimes you might, and everybody has their different process before going through and meeting. Some like to text and have multiple texts, spend a little bit of time and having a little bit of conversation. There's nothing wrong with having a conversation about, oh, I've got kids who are young. How are you comfortable with that, before even taking the time? Because as a divorced dad, again, trying to coordinate that time to even get for a hour coffee between the kid, you know, getting the kids to school and then cooking dinner, or having activities after and going to work, and then everything, you know, going to the gym and everything else. Wow, it would be great if she didn't want to date somebody with kids, if she had just said that up front, right? So there's nothing wrong with having that conversation, saying, "Oh yeah, you know what? We're probably not a match." That is my quote for saying, "Hey, you know, it was great to meet you. We're probably not a match." There's nothing wrong with saying that.
There's nothing wrong with that, and it's not. This isn't an insult to anybody, you know. And let them go and find their person. You're doing them a favor. It's just not a good fit. I'm too old to like spend lots of time wasting of my own or somebody else's. Let's all move on to our happy ways and
Right. It's
productive.
Well, it's upfront, it's honest, it's the truth, and that's the best way that you can approach this, is by, you know, being upfront, honest, and with what you want. So let's talk about that and everybody, don't get too worked up about how you write these profiles, because Eric's got an offer for you at the end we're going to talk about, and it's going to be in the show notes before, that can help you with you know, writing some of this if you want to get on and you want to do some of this. But let's talk about how to structure kind of that bio and that essay in there. Now, you talked about a couple of things not to have in there, like you don't need to be espousing all your political views. And I've seen this a lot over the last election cycle. If you don't like X, don't contact me. Well, now I will say, like, thank you, because, you know, that just tells me you're completely rigid, and I don't ever want to have a conversation with you, because it'll never work, because I feel like I have a much open mind about that. But, you know, what things are some pro things to put in there without being too specific, and some not things to put in there without being too specific, that can just kind of narrow it down and give people, you know, women, a good idea of who you are?
Yeah. So, you know, you should put in there the things that you like to do.
Okay.
What are you about? And again, you know, sometimes you know, I can say this, but it can not always be easy, like to really say, well, I don't know, I'm a divorced and I work and I have kids. That's it. But there
Okay.
are, you know, in all seriousness, like something like you
Well,
find yourself, and one day you're separated. It's like, you know, you're kind
right.
of stripped down. It's like, no, there is more to you. And that's one of the things.
Well, hopefully they're working with me at this point, Eric, and we're defining their vision and direction, and, you know, creating that. And they're already at the point now, then, when they're on the apps and they've got that vision and direction, and know
so,
those
you know,
values. And
hopefully they have worked with you and to figure that out. And that's part of this too. So let's, you know, what is it? You know, maybe you really like to cook. Maybe you actually like looking at cars. You like shopping for cars. whatever it is, you know, what kind of shows do you like to watch? Everybody watches Netflix these days almost, or maybe you don't like to watch Netflix. You really like to go outside and walk around, you know, put some information about you and more about what you really like and less of, and don't focus on things that you don't like.
Yes.
A really big killer, and I see women do this more than men, but don't put anything on your profile like, don't message me if you're ex or anything like that. Don't put stuff like that on.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Amen. Be
Yeah,
positive.
like, be really positive. So like have stuff on there, like say, hey, like love to buy you a drink. Hey, what, and this is something I help work with guys on, but have it upbeat. Let's be positive. The number one attractive thing to both genders actually is a smile. Be approachable. Put stuff on there that's interesting. And again, I can't say it enough. Don't get into the political stuff. Now if you are a Gen Xer, we're not quite as in spite of what we all saw over Facebook the last several months, we tend not to be like so rigid on our politics. But like for millennials, actually, like it's like 80% would not get with somebody who had differing political views than them.
Interesting.
We're Gen Xers aren't as quite as rigid about that. But don't float that stuff out there. You don't need to get into that. It just like get to know somebody and their in spite of whatever we've been told, like over the last like several months and years with all the stuff with going on with politics, it's really not who you are. This is
right.
It's your opinion on a few things, and then it becomes like this big political line. Let's stay focused on you, what you like to do, what makes you happy, and what else would somebody find interesting about you?
I would describe that as sticking to your values, right? Your values are who you aspire to be.
Yeah.
Right. Kind, honest, stuff like that. Stick to the values and the things that you enjoy doing, and try to mix some humor in there too. Cause like everybody likes to laugh. I've never met anybody that's like, stop making me laugh so much, or that was just so funny that I didn't want to contact you.
Yeah.
Right. So, and if you're not naturally funny, that's okay too, but just, try to mix that in and be yourself.
Be yourself. Yeah. And it shows too. It's and when you start reading profiles, so if you haven't been out there yet, so depending where you are in the cycle, but if you haven't been out there yet, you'll see very quickly the profiles that are just have nothing on it. And when you put some personality into it, they become a lot more attractive, even if it isn't necessarily your full cup of tea. But when you start having a little bit more content on there, and not to overdo it, but you have a little bit of content on you do become a more interesting person on there.
Yep. Okay, so we've got that all set up. Let's talk a little bit about the process of communicating. We did with the swiping apps, but with with the more detailed apps and the ones where it seems, at least in my experience, you have more of a captive audience that's really interested in maybe connecting and maybe meeting offline to see if there is a connection. Now, one caveat I will say to this, and it's on both sides with men and women, oftentimes I have found that if they haven't done really their work around themselves, they haven't figured out that they have or don't have the time to commit to dating, because it takes a conscious effort, especially if you're a divorced dad or a divorced mom, to spend the time doing that. So just know that there's a lot of people out there that you try to coordinate something and they thought it was a good idea to get on an app, and then they got a lot of men, and then they just couldn't figure anything out. And you see a high percentage of men and women, and I would say maybe more women, that just fall off the app because then they just can't even, they can't even keep up with messages, let alone they haven't carved out the time and made a conscious intention to meet for dates.
Yeah, it can be. And this is the advantage too. So you're sending off a message to women, and they could get a lot of like, hi there. And even if you're really interested and you really want to meet them, you send a hi there, you're just stuck in the pack. And if they are really busy, you want to stand out. There's another piece of this too. So there's part of the dynamic, and I'll caveat this too. There's gender nonconformity. So I know me personally, I have some gender nonconformity. But overall, in general, so I'm going to make a generalization here. Men chase women, and women want to be chased by men.
Yes.
And so, and
that's a biological known fact.
yeah,
Eric.
and that's just how it works, and
Yes.
we could talk about, same sex relationships and stuff too. So there's a little bit of a
Mhm.
different dynamic around that as well. But that's just like this overall generalization
Sure.
around this here. So for guys, when you're going out there and you're chasing women, you want to go out there and you want to be the chaser. You want to have like that going and grab them, and you want to go and pursue.
Initiator, right?
Yeah, and some of the good news around this too for guys is it used to be like when you were in your, maybe if you're a Gen Xer like us,
Yeah.
when you were in your 20s, you didn't have the cards. You had no cards. Now it's a more level playing field. So you know what, you go and get to do the chase, but you'll probably get a little bit more response and respect in the process as well. But you got to pursue, and women want to be pursued. It's just part of that process. And again, this is a generalization, but there's a good kernel of truth to that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fair assessment, especially on these dating apps, because there's so many men on them and they're getting so many messages. It's going to be the absolute rare time you're going to get initiated a message from a woman. And so, and I think that's a good thing, because we need to be initiating, like you said, old school, where we were out there and getting rejected, right? Nonstop approaching women and talking to women. And, so we may, us Gen Xers have a little more of a thick skin around it. Now, maybe we've been married for a period of time and forgot what that rejection feels like, but, we can get back in it. And it's a lot easier to do on the apps because you're behind this screen. So if you get a rejection, and hopefully the person on the other side, the woman on the other side, is going to be cognizant of that. And this is just a challenge across social media, period, that there's another person on the other side, and they're going to, if they're not interested, say something. And hopefully the men are going to be polite and, nice and straightforward about, how they're approaching the women as well, because there's a person on the other side, and just be cognizant of that and respectful that, hey, it doesn't seem like we're a match. Thanks for the message.
Yep.
And that can be a perfectly appropriate response for you as well. If you find after a little short conversation that, just doesn't seem like, that we're a match. It was great chatting. It's perfectly fine to do that. And I would also add, and tell me if you agree, please do that, because ghosting is just an absolutely immature, stupid, ridiculous way that has become just like the default way to just stop doing things. And it's because there's no face-to-face interaction online. But if you can take the mindset of, pretend like you're having a conversation with this person face-to-face and act accordingly, I think everybody would be having much better interactions.
Yeah, I would say try really hard not to ghost, even though it's uncomfortable. We all live, even here. So I live in, I'm in Toronto, big city. You'd be surprised, like who knows who. So really try not to not to ghost, because
there's the karma in the world, right? There's karma out there.
There's karma, and then realistically, like you'll end up crossing paths with somebody sooner or later, somebody who knows somebody. So try not to ghost.
Absolutely.
It's your brand. Try not to ghost.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're getting a little long. I wanted to hit on just a couple more things, and the one was, so then you're messaging, maybe you've caught somebody's interest, so we've gone through the whole process that you've just taken us through, Eric, on all these sites, and you're messaging back and forth, and obviously, maybe some people want a pen pal. Most people want to actually go on a date. Maybe not 200 in a month like you did or whatever it was, but want to meet somebody and then see if there is that connection. How do you then take that messaging? How many messages should you have before? How long should you be messaging? I mean, what is there any criteria around that you should be, and how do you go about making that transition?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I don't have like a perfect answer around that. But you want to have some exchanges with somebody. So you want to do, for your own sake, you want to do some filtering on here to see if this is like somebody who you want to, are you willing to go to the next step to try and get them on the phone or try to meet up with them?
Okay.
And so you want to get it on there, get some level of communication on there. On the flip side, though, you don't want to become really accustomed to having a text only conversation there, because it's going to be awkward when you finally meet.
Yeah.
So like pretty quickly get some information across, to see if this looks like a good match or not. And it may take a couple of days, it may take some exchanges, and you may never, and it may get to the point like where they're busy and you're really busy, but you just, now both of you are going to be free this Thursday night, and you'll just meet up for coffee. That's okay.
Or 4 Thursdays from from this week in
Okay.
my case sometimes, but
yeah, whatever it is, but at least, let's get to that point where you're going to meet with somebody. But you can't like, I know of other stories too, you can't just go out there and say, like, oh, hey, you like cooking, I like cooking, let's meet up. Like, no, let's get a little more information exchange and get some more comfort level too, because everybody's looking for that now too. Everybody wants to have that little more information. And do you do a phone call or not? Maybe not.
Right.
It's part of it may be part of your qualifying, part of your screening, filtering that you do, or you may never do it. You may just meet with somebody, but you want to have some information come across. And there isn't an exact, and again, there's not an exact formula. I would say this is part of the thing too. I always encourage guys to do is, go with your gut. Does this seem like it's going somewhere, and you want to get to the next step?
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, though, you can say, hey, I'd like to chat with you. And they say, well, I want to exchange a little bit longer, or, can we text a little longer? Yeah, no problem. But, like somebody's been stringing you along for a couple of weeks now and just wants a pen pal.
Yeah.
Cut bait.
Right there that they're not ever interested in doing that. So,
yeah. So I don't know what it is. You never want to go out. Maybe your boyfriend won't let you out, or whatever it is.
Right. Or your husband.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed, and I had to do this too more than a few times. So, I've enjoyed, exchanging text with you. If you ever do want to meet up, please let me know.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
Cut bait.
So it's interesting because I found that different women just have a different process to wanting to get there. I know what my process is, and I sometimes will offer out, I'm old school, right? Like, so we're Gen Xers. We used to call in high school and talk on the phone, right? And ask them out. So I'm still old school, like that old school wanting to talk on the phone and ask you out properly, as I would describe it. But I've run into resistance that I don't want to give my phone number, and that, I don't want to, let's just set it up on text, and we'll do that and meet on text before I give you my number. And so it just really, sometimes it's as simple as say, I respect the fact that you have a process to meeting. I'm very interested in meeting you. I've enjoyed our conversation. How would you like to go forward with that? Now, I'd like to be more forward, like in, drive the bus and, pursue, like you said, and set a direction that I'm comfortable with. Some women don't want that. And that's, again, like you said, kind of gauge, right? You can gauge how comfortable you feel with them, what feels comfortable to you, what feels comfortable to them. And just, again, if you keep in mind that this person may have had not a necessarily successful and rewarding dating experience on these apps or in general, and have some compassion around it, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and you don't know somebody else's story, so it's okay. If somebody wants to just say, I'll just meet face to face. I don't want to give him. Okay, I don't think that there's anything terrible with that. One of the things I will say, and I do like what you said there about being forward. How do you want to move forward? Like, I'd like to meet with you. Put it out there, and then say, get to that. But when you set that date, say, I always tell people to do this. Say, great, it's a date. We're not meeting as friends. We're not hanging out. This isn't a business meeting. No, it's a date.
Good point.
Make sure you, I always want to make sure to get that in there. So that's what it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. It is a date.
Great point.
Yeah.
So let's talk then about what kind of date. Now this is getting a little bit into the dating coach part of it. So I don't want to go too far and then go down the process, but is it, let's get together for a coffee or drink, or, let's go to dinner? I hear the complaints all the time that it's just, and again, we're divorced dads. It's a lot of effort to get out. It might be a lot of effort really to carve out a whole evening to go to dinner and a show or whatever you might plan. What do you recommend as the first thing to see if this is somebody that you connect with or not?
Yeah, there's no absolute answer on this here. And if you start going out to dinner, if you start getting a lot of dates, going out to dinner gets really expensive these
Yeah,
days.
200 in a month. Yeah, that's going to be expensive, man.
Yeah, just in general though, like if I have 3 dates and it's $60 and it's $60 a dinner, or you know, if I end up paying for the whole date, like it gets crazy. About that's a lot of money. It can get really expensive.
Right.
Coffee dates are okay. They're good because you get to chat. They're kind of generic though. So I recommend like changing it up, and don't always have like your standard date place, and maybe
Sure.
make it specific to what this person is and what you're about. You know, you like to go to the park.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. You have a really special favorite tea place. You know, I've done ones like, hey, let's meet for ice cream. It's actually something different. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it's just something kind of fun. You get to talk about the ice cream too. It's not just coffee. And there's not an absolute answer. The first date I had with my partner now, though, we actually met for dinner. I was really intrigued by her and then the way it all went. But you know, maybe you don't do that all the time, but you could do that too if something's, and just it was just sort of the way things lined up around it too. But you know, don't have a specific formula. Don't be set in it. Try and be different too. You know, again, this is your chance to stand out. And I work with people too like that. You know, how do we get there? What's a different date we can do? And let's figure it out depending where you are, where they are, what you like, things like that.
Right. And during these COVID times, it's a great time to like get creative and figure out a different way. Now, maybe you can't do it in Toronto right now with how cold it is, but a walk in the park or coffee in the park, or like you said, going to meet for ice cream, which again, I wouldn't want to do in the middle of winter in Toronto, but something that's interesting and creative. Now, it doesn't have to be the bar, doesn't have to be the coffee shop anymore. It could be a hike, or it could be, you know, something different or creative. And I did also want to touch back on the when to connect and when to escalate to meeting. And I always feel like if you're chatting for more than maybe a week or sharing texts, that, you know, if you're interested, it's kind of like in person. Like if you meet somebody and you get to the point where you just have enough information or connection with them that you want to go out with, like on a date, or you want to see them in person, like you would in person, escalate it. Say, hey, I'd like to meet. And that could be a handful of messages, right? Like, hey, yeah, that was a cool, fun messages. You seem really cool. Let's get, because that's going to then really weed people out, because you can waste just so much time going back and forth, and then find that either they're just wasting time, or they haven't, like we talked about earlier, haven't defined their time in their life to actually be able to do it. So you waste a couple of weeks on 5 different people, and it's like, oh, that was just a waste of time.
Yeah. Don't. This is your time. Don't give it away. This is something that's valuable. It's your time. And it's part of the process. You know, most of your dates will not be like, you won't be having second dates. And that's great. That's okay. But don't let somebody just string you along endlessly for messages. You didn't go on there to find a pen pal. You go on there to meet somebody.
Right.
And when I say meet somebody, like to actually meet somebody who you want to spend a lot more time with.
Right. Well, and I want to comment on that too, about what that first date should look like, because you're starting this online and it's virtually impossible to see if it's somebody you connect with. Unlike if you are in person and you'd say, oh yeah, I get a good feeling from this person. I'd like to spend maybe a little more time. I don't feel like it's a bad thing to maybe meet for a drink or coffee and have it be short and sweet, and see if there's a connection, and just say that up front. Let's see if there's a connection. Let's grab like a quick drink, or let's grab like happy hour, quick drink, or let's just grab some coffee or something, see if we connect. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and the point that I'd like to make and get your feedback on, is there's going to be a ton of first dates and no second date. So let's finish off with that, with just something around that, and that it's okay.
Yep. So I'll go back to the thing you said before. You were talking about, oh gosh, no, it slipped my mind. You can go out for coffee, and then if it gets really interesting, you can go out for dessert, for dinner, for a walk. or you can just end it, or maybe you have to get home anyways, or maybe they have to get home. That's okay. But it is a great starting point. You can start with something small, and then if you can choose to keep hanging out or not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a really good thing too, because you got that space to say, oh, I need to go.
Right. You knew in the first minute and you're like, dang, this is going to go 15 minutes longer than it should have and be unsuccessful and unrewarding. But
Yes.
hey, that's all right.
Yeah. So I had a ton of first dates. I think it was like somewhere around like 75. I only had second dates with 3 or 4 women. Very, very few. I enjoyed myself on all of the first dates. They were all interesting. I had a couple of wacky stories that came back. Maybe they had some wacky stories about me. I don't know.
We'll see after this goes out. We'll see in the comments, maybe.
I remember. But you know what? Like it was all interesting, and just try and treat each one, respectfully. It's an experience, but like very quickly just saying, this isn't for me, but it was a learning experience. I learned about them and much more about myself, and that's a great thing, and maybe they learned about themselves on this as well. And this helped me, like, with my filtering process. And also, you spend time working with people to try and like help sort themselves out. That's part of this. You get to figure out who are you, and part of the coaching you do, what is it. And that's really important, is as we start putting our lives back together, and and you don't want it to be what it was before. You want it to be way better. And that's all that becomes part of this, and becomes bigger than even the dating. It's all about, becomes you. This is learning about yourself and making things better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I want to end it on that. And I want to say my biggest takeaway from, I mean, all the advice that you gave us specifically about going through the dating apps, but the biggest takeaway that I'm getting today from you is just, you can utilize this as an opportunity to better understand yourself. You can enjoy yourself in meeting. I mean, it's great to meet women. And if you take it from a mindset of curiosity and being understanding and empathetic and compassionate with the fact that somebody on the other side is going through some similar challenges. They may have been divorced and have kids and all the challenges that you are, that this is a really good opportunity for you. And so don't work from an outcome, work from more of a mindset of curiosity and having fun and developing yourself. And it can be an immense amount of fun on the dating apps, and then see where it comes from.
Yep. That's great.
Awesome.
That's a really good summary. Thank you, Jude.
Awesome. Eric, it was such a pleasure having you on today. So first, let everybody know what your special offer is today, because I think they're going to be really excited about it. And I wish I would have had this offer to help me sort out my dating apps early on.
So a few things. So I do a free coaching call with everybody.
Awesome.
Part of it too is like to see, can I help you? Is this a good fit? But also it's no charge, no commitment. So that's one thing that's available to everybody.
So how do they connect on that?
So I gave you the one pager. I think you posted on your site.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes. Okay.
You can also that has my phone number, my email address on there. So I'm Dating Ace. So dating-ace.com. And I'm Eric at datingace.com. So that's my website. It's my phone number. There's a form on my website, whatever the easiest way to get a hold of me is.
Awesome.
So no cost assessment, no cost coaching call assessment. I do. Also, I build dating profiles. And so mentioned that you heard me on your show, that I was heard here on Divorced Advocate, 50% discount off of building a profile.
Awesome. 50% discount. And I'm going to tell you guys, go and do it, because I spent hours and hours trying to perfect one, get them good. Eventually it got pretty good, but if you can work with Eric and do this, it's going to make things much more enjoyable and successful. And you can, spend more time in having those successful and rewarding dates, and less time fiddle fussing around with your dating profile and trying to get that all dialed in. Social media. Are you on social media also, Eric?
Yes. So I'm, you can find me. I've done one TikTok. So
A
don't,
TikTok. All right.
uh,
Fellow Gen X, you're doing a TikTok.
yeah,
That's my man.
we've been told we don't belong there. I won't listen to the kids.
I've been told by my daughters, so, and that's fine. I'm staying off, but you
Yeah,
go for
super
it, my
cringy,
friends.
but I've done one TikTok. I'm gonna do more. I am on Facebook, so Dating Ace is my handle. You can find me on Facebook though.
Awesome. All right. And if you guys want to connect on thedivorcedadvocate.com, connect with me and schedule a free session as well. Get yourself aligned and ready to get out there and dating so that you can connect with Eric, get your profile all set up, schedule a free session there as well, or give me a call at 720-255-1021. Do you feel comfortable giving your number out,
Yes,
Eric, for them to call you
absolutely.
directly? Because sometimes that is just the best way us old school Gen Xers can connect.
Yeah, so I know we like to pick up the phone.
I do.
Yeah, that's how we're built that way. So you can call me. So my phone number 416-706-8097. It isn't, so the form we'll have in the show notes there. And again, so it's dating hyphen ASO, dating hyphen then ACE, Alpha Charlie Echo.com.
Gotcha. Eric Muraven, the Dating Ace, thanks so much for sharing all of your pearls of wisdom today. And I sincerely appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Jude. I really enjoyed being on the show.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye now.